Okay, I am Daniel. I think we're going to shoot right there. What kind of what benches you prefer?
It's up to you.
Oh, okay, I think
I was born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1925. My parents were both born in Sheffield. My mother and father came over here for hopefully for a better life. She was a housewife and he was a shoe repairer. I had two brothers and a sister. All of us born in Baltimore, Maryland in the same house. A sister and a brother has already passed away, and it's only one brother and myself left in the family. Well, they moved in 1903, my mother, and in 1912, my father, for a better life. They heard all about the United States and could live a better life there. My mother was about 19 months old and my father was about 20. The father provided for the family. I was educated in a high school and learned to be an automobile mechanic. Before the war, I was an automobile mechanic and a body and fender repairman and lived a very comfortable life before the war. Yeah. There was help by relatives that they had here, and he opened a repair shop with two brothers. And it was Samuel Muffoletto and Brothers was his repair shop. But he continued repairing shoes until his health got to a point where he couldn't do it anymore. Well, when we were young, we had a lot of Italian friends and a lot of Italian relatives, but the neighborhood we lived in was a mixed neighborhood of all nationalities and religions. That's where we grew up in. Well, there were friends that were a lot of Italians. Some lived in the neighborhood and some lived far away, as far as Little Italy and Overlea. And we just traveled around and visited different homes a lot of times. Sunday was a day for visiting. In the home, the parents spoke Italian to themselves, and to the children they spoke in English. We were raised as Italians, Italian food, Italian courtesies. Mother cooked all Italian food and nothing out of a can. Everything was fresh vegetables, fresh of everything. My favorite food was breaded veal cutlets and Italian spaghetti. We were raised as Catholics. As a matter of fact, my father in Sheffield was an altar boy. And to him, to the mother, there was only one religion, and that was Catholic. Well, I heard the attack on the radio, and I was absolutely shocked, even though I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was. I just realized that it was owned by the United States.
okay. And what?
When the attack on Pearl Harbor happened, everybody was shocked. You realize now I was only 16 years old at the time and never thought I would get involved in it. But as the war progressed, the age was cut down and I was getting older. So I finally wound up in the United States Army.
So,
well, at the time that they called me for induction, I had recently had an appendectomy operation, so they gave me a 6-month furlough. So after 6 months, then I went into the Army. But it was still 1944. I left training in Florida, Camp Blanding, Florida, and was sent to Virginia to ship out to Italy. Not by choice, but that's where they wanted us. And that was in '44. Well, the feeling was a little bit confusion, but hearing the people talk, you know, I realized that I'd heard my parents use some of the language, even though I didn't understand all of it. So I didn't feel really strange about it. Well, the war had gone past Naples at the time I arrived. There was some evidence of destruction. The people were anxious as people were getting off the boats. They were after candy and cigarettes, which we threw overboard to them. And they sent me to Italy into a replacement training center. It's a unit, as a matter of fact, it was called the 88th Replacement Center. I remember that, where the soldiers were sent before they got assigned to a unit. And during the time of 13 days later, the incision broke open inside from the early operation. So to begin with, I wound up in a hospital instead of with an outfit. I was 38 days in a hospital, and when I came out, I went back to the training center, and as soon as I got back, they wanted to know who had O positive blood and fallout, and they went out. He said, well, we're taking your blood. I said, I just got out of the hospital. Don't make any difference, they need your blood. So they took the pint of blood from me. Well, I had a hard time keeping up with the fellows, but I did the best and wound up at points just as good as they were. They had a lot of training that I didn't have, but I fell into it and got things done.
And
I was assigned to a rifle company first, and then before we even moved out, they sent us a headquarters company because they needed men. And that's when they taught me to lay telephone wire and so forth. From then on, I became a telephone lineman until the end of the war. Okay, in Rome, I went to the Vatican City. I had Mass at the cathedral, and we saw the Pope at the window. I never saw him close, but I think he went out this window at a certain time every day, and I did see that. It was very interesting. And it was very exciting to see that, and I forgot to mention, I also went to see the treasures of the Vatican, which I understand are not available today, and it was very interesting. Well, when I joined the company, it was a headquarters and headquarters company, and the units had a lot of outside interest besides land telephone lines, but I was assigned with the Sergeant Andy Vigil, who taught me how to lay wire and splice the wire and have the telephones hooked up to work properly, and how to repair them when they were broken. Very interesting job. And sometimes pretty dangerous. A lot of times you were out by yourself looking for a break in the wire, and there was a lot of shelling and a lot of activity as you're doing your job. Well, my job was to lay telephone wires between companies, like regimental headquarters wanted communications with all of their companies, and I would lay, we had like 6 men, and each one had different areas to go to, and you were responsible for that line as long as they were still in that area. And I can remember going through minefields, and if I had a pack mule, which I did at times, I would send a mule through the minefield first and try to follow in his footsteps. I remember the exact town we were in, but it was very cold and there was a lot of snow and ice, and we only had regular combat boots. And we had a sergeant, supply sergeant, that said he would try to go out and find what they called shoe packs, which kept your feet very warm. As a matter of fact, if you had them on long enough, he said, to make your feet sweat. Well, fortunately enough, he found 10 pair of shoes, of these boots, of various sizes. When he came back, he just dumped them down. He says, fellas, says, whoever they fit, go ahead and help yourself. Well, we all scrambled in trying to get his boots to fit us, and I thought I was very unlucky because there wasn't no size to fit me. So 10 men finally wound up with these combat shoe packs. So in a little while they were all called out and assigned to a patrol. And when they were sent out on patrol, that's the last we saw of them. None of them ever came back. So then I realized that I wasn't unlucky. You know, I'm a believer that if it's your time to go, you go. A lot of people don't believe that, but I do. You know, at first you feel that you were unlucky, and then later on you realize that it just wasn't your time to go. Well, two of them just involved doing nothing more than you're supposed to do. It was just different areas, and you know, you did your job, and if you did it well, and sometimes an officer has to see what you're doing in order to put you in for a Bronze Star. And I had two for meritorious achievement. And the third one, which was towards the end of the war, at the Po Valley. We're getting ready to cross the Po River. And of course the Germans knew exactly where we are, so they were zeroed in on us with a lot of shell fire and mortar fire. And I volunteered to lay a line to an officer that was on the beach who wanted to direct our fire. And I laid that line, which got torn up many, many times, and I had to go out and repair it and keep the communications open. And that's when I received the Bronze Star for heroism. And we have, you know, one man that in our outfit made a statement that I feel the same way about. He said, "We weren't heroes, we just had a job to do, and we did it well." And that's the way I feel about it. Well, that's a hard question to answer. A lot of times you didn't do anything but rest. But I found some sketches where I drew some pictures, and I wrote a poem to my mother that's in this little book if you get a chance to see it again. So, you know, you did different things, but nothing great. But the local people, they treated us like kings. They were so glad to see us, and it made us feel good that you did accomplish something. They'd meet us in these towns, and they'd have bread, and they'd have wine, and they'd have cheese. And it was a good feeling between us and the people. And the one family invited us in. I think it was 2 or 3 of us, and had spaghetti with them. And that was their way of showing they appreciated what we did. I would write to my parents. I would let them know what I was doing. I did not let them know that I was in the hospital over there until I was out of it and doing my job. I didn't want to worry them. And I wrote to my brother trying to get him to write home. He wouldn't write home. I even had the Red Cross go look for him to make sure he was still alive. So, you know, once in a while you had a chance to get writing paper from the Red Cross, and they would help you get a letter out. Also wrote to my girlfriend, who wound up to be my wife. Well, it was a sad, you know, going away, and I did see her the morning that I left. My father and brother took me to the train station, but I wrote to her. As a matter of fact, she lived, you know, you've heard the story about the girl next door? Well, she lived right next door to me, and she moved in there when she was 3 years old. So now you know how many years I knew her. We've been married for 64 years, and she was only 3 years old when she made an appearance where we lived. Well, it had to be 44 or 45 in April. April the 12th is her birthday. And it was, I told you that, un'anno hajia passato. It was a year after I'd left. Oh, you mean during the war? Where was I? Well, the last one I remember very well. It was April the 12th, 1945. I was in a foxhole, when the President of the United States died, President Roosevelt. He died on my birthday, and I know exactly where I was. And when we got the news, it was very depressing that he didn't live to see the end of the war. Yeah. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, died on my birthday. Yeah. No, any details except that I heard that they were prisoners, and also some Japanese Americans and German Americans were also, as a matter of fact, some of them were at Fort Meade, which was in Maryland, not too far from where I lived. Well, it was a good feeling when it was all over and you won the war and helped these people have their freedom back again. There were some places that the Germans were pretty nasty. I remember, if you'll listen to this, we're in a small town, and someone came over to us and said that there were some German soldiers in a hotel that were harassing and raping women and wanted to know what we could do about it. So about 4 of us went into this hotel, and we got the manager. Is the wind bothering you? The wind bothering you? I'll stop.
No. You can.
All right, so we went to this hotel and got the manager to go to this room and knock on the door, and they opened it because he was the manager. And we rushed in, and as we did, one of the Germans reached for his pillow on the bed, and I grabbed his wrist. And when I flipped the pillow up, there was a .38 Smith & Wesson revolver that he was trying to get to. And I kept that as a souvenir. I still have it home. And you want to hear the end of that story? The sergeant that was with us was a sheriff in Pecos, New Mexico. And he says, Dan, he says, when I get home, he says, I'm going to send you a belt and holster for that pistol. I said, that sounds great. 30 years later, 30 years, I've still got the letter. He finally sent me the belt and holster. After 30 years. He apologized for waiting so long. Yeah. So, you know, if that German had got to the pistol before me, who knows what would have happened. Yeah.
So,
We had a happy reunion and hugging and kissing each other and glad to see each other. And that was in 1945. And she was still in school, high school. So in 1947, we married. Right as soon as she graduated from high school, I grabbed her. As soon as she graduated from high school, I grabbed her. Because there was one other guy waiting for her. My job was the same as it was before the war. As a matter of fact, I only stayed home 1 week and went back to my old job. Now my brother, who was in the Pacific for 3.5 years, he took off for 6 months before he went back to work. Well, it was a great experience. I wouldn't like to do it again. And you have a feeling of accomplishment that if you think back, that's the one war that has been won, as opposed to how many battles have been fought since then that can't say have been actually won. And we're still fighting now. One of them for 10 years, which is almost unheard of. Yeah, I feel bad about what we did, but I wouldn't want to repeat it. Well, I believe in the fight against the terrorists, but I think all of it began unnecessarily 10 years ago when we invaded Iran for a false information, and it's got so that the whole world hates the United States. They want to kill the Americans. We're not used to that. We used to be looked up to and able to help people. I think it's a terrible waste. And another thing I disagree with about this war. During World War II, you stayed there till the war was over. If you needed a break, you might went back a couple of miles. I don't believe in sending the men home. and then send them back there. I can imagine some of them, when you go there for the first time, you don't know what to expect. But when you're going to go back the second time, you know what you're going to expect. And I think a lot of them don't even want to go back. I don't think they should be sent home. If they need a break, take them into a different area, away from the line. That's just my opinion. This little stone came from Virginia when I was waiting to embark on a trip to Italy. I had picked it up. I was sitting on my duffel bag. I picked it up and I was fooling with it and throwing it up. And when they called me to leave, instead of throwing it down, I said, I'm going to take you with me, and one day I'm going to bring you back to the United States. And I put it in my pocket and carried it throughout the war and brought it home. And I still have it after 60 years. And it's even getting smoother. And I still have it. That's a story a lot of people didn't even hear, including my own children. Short stories I had to tell you happened in the Po Valley, which was wide open naturally, and heavy shelling. One of my buddies and I saw a barn house, and said, let's duck in here and it won't be that much shrapnel. And as we got into this barn, a shell about 3 feet long came through the roof and landed in a wheelbarrow between us. And we both looked at it thinking it's going to explode any second, and we ran out, and it was a dud. It never went off. So as I said before, it wasn't our time. I mean, it landed right between us, only feet between us, and never went off. A great big thing. That's one little incident. Don't go away. Oh, another time, and this I brought it on myself. I was pulling guard duty up in the mountains, and it was bitter cold. So after my shift, and it was 4 hours on and 8 hours off. When my second 4 hours came up, it was dark. And I was so cold, I put my overcoat on, which the Americans never wore. The Germans, if you can picture them, always wore these long overcoats. So when I'm standing guard, the man that had guard duty about so many yards away from me saw the silhouette of this coat. So he sneaks up behind me with a bayonet, and instead of shoving it in my back, he said, turn around. And I did, and there was the bayonet right there. Now, he could have killed me. You know, you've heard of trigger happy people. He thought it was a German soldier, and he could have killed me on the spot because I did not hear him. That was another time. It wasn't my time, was it? I think I have one more little incident. Okay, I always had a habit of tying my field jacket around my waist by the sleeves. I didn't like things hanging around my neck. And in crossing the Po River, hanging on the side of a boat, a rowboat, when I got to the other side, the jacket was gone. And that had my dog tags in it, a Bible that my mother sent me, a flashlight, a lot of personal things. And I was hoping somebody would find it, but it never showed up. It's still over there somewhere with all my personal belongings. And I reported a lack of dog tags, and I never got them. They were never replaced until we had them made here in the States after the war, so I could have a copy of them. The story is, after the war, I became a Jeep driver for my company commander. And he was very ambitious. Let's go here, let's go there. He said, there's a little town on the top of this hill. So I went over to this town, and I drive into it, and I stop because there's one way in and one way out. And there are German soldiers lined up all around this court, still had their weapons Probably didn't even know the war was over. Well, I put the Jeep in reverse, and you know how those roads are up in the mountains, the dirt roads. I went down there backwards so fast that I scared the captain. He says, I've never been going backwards that fast in my life. And that was the end of it. When the war ended, Marshal Tito was creating a problem up in Trieste. And he selected a few of the 10th Mountain Division to go up there to occupy Trieste and keep him in his place. And that lasted a few months. And then when that episode was over with, they told us they were shipping us directly to Japan, which didn't go over too well. And after complaining a little bit, they decided to give us a 30-day delay route home. So they did send us home for 30 days, and that was when I realized that the war was over, because the day I landed in the United States, the war ended in Japan. So we didn't have to go to Japan. Wasn't my time, right? Yeah. Yes, I tried to visit them, but they wouldn't allow it because the Straits of Messina still had mines in the water, and there was no airplanes available, so they wouldn't let me go to Sicily. Although I had a young brother a couple of years later who was in Germany, they allowed him to go to Sicily, and they treated him like a king. He met relatives of ours that was still over there. Well, it was a very sad beginning. I landed home, my brother and I got home a week apart. And I met my father at the door, and unknown to my brother and I, my mother was dying from cancer. And they didn't want to tell us while we were still at war. So we didn't find out till we came home, and the next person was my mother, and she lived about 6 weeks after that. And everybody swears that, they were religious women, swears that she stayed alive till us two boys came home, and we believe that because we were home 6 weeks and they buried her. Yeah. They believed that her will kept her awake till we got home. So it wasn't really a nice homecoming. A letter says 10th Mountain was the best, from a letter written by General Hayes. That's me, and that's my brother, and that's my wife's brother, that's me, and that's a brother. These are cousins. These are in the family, all the ones that was in World War II. Yeah. And these are pictures of me doing training at Camp Blanding, Florida. These are inoculation papers from the World War II. And these are some pictures taken over in Italy, some before the war and after the war. This is about the 10th Mountain Division. This is a receipt for pistols that I was allowed to bring home as war souvenirs. And these are citations I got. There's two, there's a Bronze Star, an Oak Leaf Cluster, and a V for Valor. This is a sketch of my wife made of all my medals, which I have hanging in the house. More commendations. And here's a poem from my father on my happy birthday in 1945. Here I spend another night with nothing much to do, just staring at the burning fire and then I think of you. It's funny how a soldier's thoughts can wander far and wide and make him feel that the ones he loves are sitting by his side. I think of days when I was home and saw you every day. I took most things for granted, but now I'm far away. Yes, I'm far enough from home to know that you're the one I miss, regardless of my girlfriend whom I used to hug and kiss. If God would grant me just one wish and said it would come true, believe me, Mom, my wish would be to be at home with you. You like that?
Yeah.
That's it. Flip it
Very
over.
nice.
This is
Very nice.
Combat Infantry Association.
Uh-huh.
I belong to that. Veterans of Foreign War
Oh yeah, sure.
and American Legion. See?
Yeah, I contact all these
All these.
associations. Yeah, I call them for asking for association for veterans.
Okay.